The cameras inside the Porsche arena were already rolling, capturing every detail in high definition, yet even the most hardened insiders of the women's tennis circuit found themselves completely unprepared for the scenes that unfolded. Alex Eala had already carved her name into the headlines earlier in the tournament, first with her historic and hard-fought victory over Leylah Fernandez, and then with that unforgettable, generous gesture when she tossed her shirt into a surging sea of ecstatic Filipino fans. But the footage now exploding virally across every social media platform told an even bigger, louder, and more transformative story. It was the kind of moment that felt like a genuine turning point, a shift that everyone could sense but no one could fully explain. From the very second Alex Eala stepped off the practice court, she was immediately swallowed by a massive wall of waving Philippine flags and an overwhelming wave of deafening chants that seemed to shake the very ground beneath her feet. Her warm-up drills were so intensely sharp and aggressively focused that even potential opponents training nearby paused their own sessions just to watch, mesmerized by the power and precision on display. Then came a deeply emotional exchange with one dedicated fan who had waited a full 48 hours, through exhaustion, travel delays, and sleepless nights, simply for the chance to see her in person. This wasn't shaping up to be just another ordinary tournament day in Stuttgart. Something far greater was building, something undeniable and magnetic, pulling everyone into its orbit. Was it her raw, unrelenting intensity that was on full display? Was it the full explosive force of the so-called Eala Effect, finally detonating with full power on European soil for the first time? Or was it simply the unique electricity generated by a Stuttgart crowd that had never witnessed anything quite like this phenomenon before? Whatever the exact ingredients were, one truth had become crystal clear by the end of the day. Alex Eala was no longer merely a promising rising star in women's tennis. She had become the undisputed main event. It all ignited the moment she stepped onto the practice court at the Porsche arena. In an instant, the outside world seemed to grind to a complete halt. Traffic on the surrounding streets literally froze as cars pulled over one by one. Drivers stepped out of their vehicles, drawn instinctively toward the growing, thunderous sound that echoed through the city. What they heard wasn't mere crowd noise, it was a powerful, living roar. Thousands upon thousands of Filipino fans had gathered hours and hours before she was even scheduled to strike her first ball, their flags held high and their voices locked together in perfect rhythmic unity, chanting her name as if it represented something far bigger than just sport. This wasn't ordinary fan support anymore. This was a full-blown movement. This was cultural identity on full display. This was a vibrant 20-year-old talent from Manila single-handedly transforming an otherwise routine practice session deep in Germany into something that felt unmistakably like home. In that electric atmosphere, Stuttgart no longer felt like Stuttgart. It felt like history itself was unfolding right before everyone's eyes, raw and real and impossible to look away from. What had always been a quiet, controlled environment, a practice court meant for focused repetition and discreet preparation, had been completely transformed the instant Alex Eala walked onto it. The barriers surrounding the court were now packed tightly shoulder to shoulder with excited fans pressing forward eagerly, their phones raised high like thousands of tiny lights, desperately trying to capture every single movement because, to them, every moment truly mattered. Security personnel who had spent days carefully preparing for what they expected to be a large crowd suddenly found themselves facing something entirely different, an overwhelming overflow of passion and energy that pushed every limit. This was pressure. This was scale on a level rarely, if ever, associated with a simple practice session. And then came the single clip that changed everything for good. With no music, no prearranged signal, and no cue whatsoever, one lone voice suddenly rose above the rest. Within seconds, 10 voices joined in, then hundreds, then thousands. In perfect, organic synchronization, the chant erupted like a force of nature. Eala, Eala. It was raw, unstoppable, and amplified dramatically by the acoustics of the arena until it became a thunderous clap that literally shook the entire venue. The sound was so loud and so powerfully unified that it achieved the unthinkable. It actually interrupted play on the main center court. Players who had been in the middle of their own warm-up suddenly paused, looking around in surprise. Umpires glanced upward for a brief moment, caught off guard. In that unforgettable instant, the biggest stage inside the entire Porsche arena wasn't the prestigious center court anymore. It was the practice court where Alex Eala stood at the heart of it all, and everyone inside the building knew it without question. But somehow, even that astonishing scene wasn't the most unbelievable part of the day. Sitting quietly in the stands, almost hidden away from the surrounding chaos, was a mysterious figure that nobody had expected to see. He kept a low profile with a baseball cap pulled down low over his eyes, observing everything in calm silence. yet his mere presence carried an undeniable weight that subtly changed the energy of the entire space. The cameras caught the precise moment it happened. During a rally, Alex Eala suddenly looked up toward the stands. She froze mid-motion for a split second. The deafening noise around her seemed to disappear completely. Her eyes locked onto that one spot with instant recognition. Without any hesitation or explanation, she stopped the rally cold. Her hitting partner stood there confused, waiting for some signal to continue. But Alex didn't reset, she didn't wait, she didn't even offer a quick word. Instead, she ran straight across the court toward the man watching silently from the stands. Because some moments in life are simply bigger than training routines. Some moments demand that you stop everything and step fully into them. What happened next was recorded from every possible angle and spread like wildfire across the internet. The warm, heartfelt embrace was captured beautifully in slow motion. When the mystery figure finally lifted his cap, a visible ripple of pure shock moved through the entire crowd as thousands of people tried to process exactly who they were seeing. Meanwhile, Alex Eala stood face to face with him, completely locked in, no distractions, no external noise, just pure, focused connection. They spoke quietly and intently for several long minutes. Alex nodded again and again, absorbing every single word as if each one carried deep meaning and importance. Whatever was exchanged in that private conversation, the internet has been obsessively trying to decode and analyze it ever since. The visitor's exact identity still remains unconfirmed and hotly debated, fueling millions upon millions of views and discussions across every platform. Yet even that powerful encounter wasn't the most emotionally moving moment captured on that unforgettable day in Stuttgart. Because somewhere deep within that same massive crowd, among the thousands who had traveled across cities, across countries, and even across borders just to be there, one particular story stood out above all the rest, and the cameras found her. A young woman no older than 25 stood pressed tightly against the barrier, holding a simple handmade sign that read with heartbreaking honesty, 48 hours, 3 trains, 1 dream. Her eyes were red and swollen, not merely from physical exhaustion but from overwhelming emotion. Her hands trembled slightly with nerves, yet her smile remained completely unshakable, genuine, and radiantly real. The footage clearly shows the exact instant when Alex Eala noticed her during yet another rally. Once again, she stopped everything without hesitation. She walked straight over to the edge of the court, spoke briefly and calmly with security, and then did something truly rare at the highest levels of professional tennis. She personally asked them to let the dedicated fan through the barriers and onto the court area. The entire crowd leaned forward in anticipation. Phones were lifted even higher, everyone desperate not to miss what was about to unfold. And then it happened beautifully and naturally. Alex Eala reached out gently, took the young woman's shaking hands into her own and asked in a soft, caring voice, "You waited 48 hours. The fan was so overcome that she couldn't even speak at first. She could only nod as fresh tears began streaming freely down her face. In that quiet, intimate pocket of time, with the massive noise of the arena somehow fading into the background, Alex spoke words that touched everyone watching. Thank you for believing in me." She emphasized that it wasn't just about being fans or followers, it was about real, deep belief. Then, without any pause or second thought, she reached into her bag and pulled out one of her now iconic signature shirts, the very same jersey design that had sold out within seconds at the Miami Open. She placed it carefully and warmly into the woman's hands. Finally, she pulled her into a sincere, heartfelt embrace as the surrounding crowd exploded into an absolute eruption of cheers, applause, and raw emotion. It wasn't polite clapping or routine cheers, it was a genuine, thunderous outpouring of joy and connection. Within hours, that single clip had taken over the internet, racking up millions of views as people across continents replayed it again and again. Not because it was staged or dramatically produced, but because it felt profoundly real and human. Soon after, the deeper story behind the moment surfaced and touched even more hearts. The young woman's name was Maria. She had made the long journey all the way from a small, quiet town in Italy. It had taken 3 trains, 2 buses, and months of dedicated saving just to make the trip possible. When she finally arrived in Stuttgart, she didn't waste any time sightseeing or resting. Instead, she camped right outside the Porsche Arena for 2 full nights in the cold, all to secure her spot at the very front of the barrier. In an interview with a local reporter, Maria explained through tears, "I wanted to see her. I wanted to tell her that she's the reason I keep going. My father passed away last year, and watching Alex play was the only thing that brought me any real happiness during that time. I just had to tell her in person." When Alex Eala was later asked about that special interaction, you could see the genuine emotion reflected clearly in her expression. It wasn't just another quick fan meet and greet that would soon be forgot. This one stayed with her. "Stories like that," she said thoughtfully, "they remind me exactly why I play this game. It's not about rankings, it's not about collecting titles or chasing points, it's about the people." It's about making a real difference, even if it's only a small one, in someone's life when they need it most. And that, more than anything else, is precisely what all those unforgettable clips from Stuttgart ultimately reveal. They aren't merely highlight reels or impressive crowd shots. They are living proof that something profound is shifting in real time. Alex Eala is no longer simply competing week after week on the WTA Tour. She is connecting on a deeper level. She is resonating with people across cultures and borders. She is quietly becoming something far larger and more meaningful than the game of tennis itself. But the viral footage from those days in Stuttgart didn't stop at capturing the incredible roar of the crowd and the heartfelt human moments. It also captured something even more significant, a clear and visible transformation in Alex Eala's game, especially on the clay surface. Nowhere was this evolution more strikingly obvious than during one particular practice session that nobody could have predicted would become so iconic. Suddenly, the energy on the main court shifted dramatically, and the camera zoomed in to reveal a pairing that sent the entire tennis Twitter community into complete chaos and excitement. There was Alex Eala hitting side by side with Iga Świątek, not in a casual, light warm-up, but with serious intent, purpose, and a level of competitive fire that made it obvious this was elite-level preparation. On the opposite side of the net stood one of the most dominant clay court players of the current era, a two-time Stuttgart champion, a four-time French Open winner, a player who reads and commands red clay with almost instinctive mastery. Yet there was zero hesitation or intimidation visible from the 20-year-old Alex Eala, only pure focus and fearless execution. The footage that emerged was nothing short of extraordinary. Two powerful left-handers, each shaped by high-performance systems but at different stages of their careers, traded ground strokes on the indoor clay as if they were on center stage in a final. Alex, still only 20, absorbed every spin, every adjustment, and every ounce of pace with impressive composure. Świątek, at 24 and already a multiple Grand Slam champion, delivered the kind of relentless, high-quality ball striking that only true elites can produce consistently. But what stood out most clearly in the clips spreading rapidly online was this: Alex wasn't merely surviving the intense rallies, she was thriving inside them. Her footwork looked sharper and more efficient than ever. Her timing was clean and decisive. Her movement was controlled rather than frantic. And those signature left-handed angles, the same weapons that had first built her reputation, sliced through the court with growing confidence and purpose. Then came one particular exchange that stopped countless people mid-scroll as they watched in awe. A rally that began looking routine quickly evolved into something much more special. In that moment, you could see it happening live, not just raw potential or future promise, but real measurable progress unfolding right there on the court in front of one of the greatest clay court players in the world. The decisive rally lasted a full 25 shots without a single break or moment of hesitation. It was pure rhythm, precision, and control as Alex Eala and Iga Świątek traded powerful blows from the baseline like it was a high-stakes match rather than practice. Backhand to backhand, forehand to forehand, the angles grew tighter and the margins smaller until finally Alex stepped boldly into the ball, took it early on the rise, and ripped a sharp, devastating angle winner that cut cleanly across the clay, completely unreachable, even for Świątek. For a brief split second, everything on the court seemed to pause. Then came the most telling reaction of all, not from the watching crowd but from Świątek herself. A subtle but deeply respectful nod. The kind of quiet acknowledgement that is rarely given so freely at this level. That single clip exploded across the internet, gathering millions of views and endless replays from every possible camera angle. People weren't just watching a practice rally. They were witnessing genuine growth and development in real time. You could see it clearly in Alex's movement and decision-making. On a surface that had previously exposed some of her limitations, she now appeared remarkably comfortable, balanced, and fully in control, sliding confidently into her shots instead of desperately chasing them, constructing points with intelligence rather than simply reacting under pressure. In the stands, the reaction from coaches, analysts, and fellow players spoke volumes. People leaned forward, fingers pointed, quiet, serious conversations broke out, because everyone watching understood the same undeniable truth. This was no longer the same player from just a few months earlier. This was a clear upgrade. If that intense practice session meant anything at all, it signaled that Alex Eala wasn't just showing up to tournaments anymore. She was truly arriving as a serious contender. And then, after all the noise, all the energy, and all the powerful moments that had already defined the day, came the single scene that many will remember as the defining highlight of the entire Stuttgart tournament. Following her victory, when most players would have understandably disappeared quickly into the locker room to recover, Alex Eala made her way back out onto the court once more. She walked slowly and deliberately to the very center of the Porsche arena and stopped, looking up at the stands. What she saw was breathtaking, a vast, endless sea of Philippine flags waving proudly everywhere, the entire crowd still chanting her name relentlessly after hours of non-stop support. The energy had been building for what felt like forever, but then, in a moment of pure magic, something unexpected happened. A deep, respectful silence gradually spread through the massive arena like an invisible signal. Thousands of voices fell quiet almost at once. All eyes turned toward her with anticipation. Alex raised her arms, took a deep, steadying breath, and instead of simply waving goodbye or leaving quietly, she reached for a microphone and took full, joyful control of the moment. "Laban!" she shouted into the arena with pure passion and energy. The response from the crowd was instantaneous and overwhelming. "Laban!" came roaring back, louder and stronger than before. She continued feeding the fire, "Laban, Laban." Now it wasn't merely a chant anymore, it had become a living, pulsing heartbeat that echoed powerfully through every corner of the venue. "Eala!" she called out. "Eala!" The crowd thundered back in perfect unity. "Pilipinas!" she cried. "Pilipinas!" they answered with national pride swelling in every voice. In those few extraordinary minutes, the Porsche Arena in Germany no longer felt like a professional tennis venue in Europe. It felt exactly like home in Manila, vibrant, emotional, and deeply connected. Flags waved even higher, voices cracked with raw feeling. Some fans shouted through happy tears while others simply cried openly while still cheering at the top of their lungs. For that brief, unforgettable time, player and crowd were no longer separate entities. They had become one single, powerful voice united by something far bigger than any individual match or tournament result. Clips of that magical celebration spread instantly across every platform, crossing countries and time zones within minutes. Millions watched, shared, and felt moved because what they were witnessing wasn't just a player politely acknowledging her supporters. They were seeing the full, unstoppable force of what people had begun calling the Eala Effect in action. Alex Eala wasn't simply winning tennis matches anymore. She was moving people on a deeper level. She was uniting them across distances. She was giving them something meaningful and lasting to hold onto during difficult times. When she was asked about that special moment with the crowd later on, her answer cut straight through all the hype and noise with refreshing honesty. "These fans traveled thousands of miles just to see me," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "They spent their hard-earned money, they saved for months, they took time off from work, they rearranged important parts of their lives. The least I could do was give them a moment they would never forget." And that is exactly what she delivered. Because while some performances in tennis are measured strictly in points, games, and sets won, this particular day in Stuttgart was measured in something far more lasting, in the number of hearts touched, connections made, and lives briefly brightened. The cameras inside the Porsche Arena didn't just record a series of nice highlights that day. They captured history unfolding in real time, moments that still feel almost unreal even after multiple viewings. From a practice session so powerfully electric that it literally stopped traffic outside, to a tearful and deeply personal exchange with a fan who had waited 48 long hours just to feel seen and valued. From those jaw-dropping, high-level rallies alongside one of the greatest clay court players of the generation, to a celebration that literally shook the foundations of the entire stadium with its emotional power. This wasn't merely another tournament stop, this was a full-scale takeover. The Eala Effect had well and truly arrived in Stuttgart, with thousands of passionate Filipino fans transforming an entire German city into something that felt unmistakably like home. Flags flying proudly everywhere you looked, voices echoing endlessly through the arena and surrounding streets, emotions spilling far beyond the boundaries of the court. And right at the center of it all stood Alex Eala, not just competing or improving her game, but actively becoming something much bigger and more meaningful than the sport of tennis alone. She was becoming a true movement. Now the spotlight turns forward once again. The next formidable test waiting in her path is none other than Jasmine Paolini, the world number 8 and a proven battle-hardened force on the tour who stands directly in the way of further progress. But after everything that Stuttgart has already witnessed, after the incredible noise, the intense pressure, and all those unforgettable human moments, nothing about this upcoming match feels predictable or ordinary anymore. Because this story is no longer following any conventional script, it has taken on a life and momentum all its own. So what do you think? Which single moment from these unforgettable days in Stuttgart shocked or moved you the most? Was it the traffic-stopping, history-making roar during that practice session, the deeply emotional and tearful interaction with Maria, the intense, eye-opening rallies with Iga Świątek that showcased real growth on clay, or that magical, unifying chant that briefly transformed a quiet German arena into a vibrant corner of the Philippines? Drop your honest thoughts and favorite moments in the comments below. And if you're looking for daily WTA stories that go well beyond the final scoreline and dive deep into the human side of the game, make sure you stay tuned right here. Because right now, with every match that Alex Eala plays, it genuinely feels like something much larger and more inspiring is quietly unfolding before our eyes.